did my research. And they fight for Hillary but don't tell you that. They fight for Republicans but they don't even know it. But we're honest with you guys. That's why you trust us. Yes, I'm with Bernie. So let me ask you something. Look, during the banking crisis in 2008, you know how much money we lost? We lost $2 trillion alone in just retirement savings. $2 trillion of your retirement flushed down. And the bankers still got their bonuses. Now, there was one person in the race who decided that she would go give speeches to those same bankers. She decided that she would take the money of those bankers and protect those bankers. But there's one guy in the race who said, "Bring him up!" Let me ask you guys somebody. Who was that guy? There's one guy who's been fighting for 40 years on all the issues that you care about: income inequality, getting money out of politics, the environment, criminal justice reform, single-payer health care. He didn't do it for politics. He did it because he cares. Who is that guy? So now I'm not going to introduce Senator Sanders. You are. So tell me, who's going to be the next president of the United States of America?
People here ready for a political revolution. Thank you. This is a fantastic turnout, and I appreciate everybody being here this evening. Let me begin by thanking Jordan Marbo, Guerra, Loco. I didn't get that right? Guerra, Loco. Ruma Willis and Jane Huger of the Young Turks. By the way, Jane and the Young Turks do an extraordinarily good job. In looking at the world in a very different way than corporate media does, and I appreciate what they do. You know, from up here, you guys are looking pretty beautiful yourselves. You know, one of the great exciting aspects of running for President of the United States and going all over this country is to see beautiful people, young and old, of every color, from every nation, standing up and understanding that our nation can do much better than it is doing today. campaign a little over a year ago, what the pundits were saying is that our campaign was a fringe campaign. And what they were saying is the American people they're satisfied with establishment politics and establishment economics. American people don't mind working longer hours for lower wages. It's fine with young people that they graduate college $70,000 in debt. It really doesn't matter that people are working 2 or 3 jobs and almost all the new income and wealth is going to the top 1%. Well, it looks like the pundits got it wrong. It looks like the American people, in fact, are sick and tired of establishment politics and establishment economics. And it looks like the American people are ready to transform our country in very profound ways. Now, a year ago when we began the campaign, people didn't think we were going anywhere. Well, as of today, we have now won 20 state primaries and caucuses. And by the way, we won most of them by landslide victories. And on June 7th, there's going to be a primary here. And in 5 other states, and with your help, we're going to win a, dare I say, huge victory. And there has been something else that's been going on throughout this campaign, which really makes me extremely optimistic about the future of our country. And that is that in every election contest, we have won, even those that we have lost, we have won, mostly by overwhelming numbers, the votes of young people throughout this country. The vision that we share of a nation based on social justice, economic justice, racial justice, environmental justice, that is going to be the vision for the future of this country. Point that needs to be made, which I think has not been made often enough, and that is that if the Democratic Party wants the strongest candidate to defeat Donald Trump, and we all know for the future of this country, we've got to defeat Donald Trump. Campaign that defeats Donald Trump. Now, in poll after poll, national polls and in statewide polls, especially those in battleground states, turns out that in almost every instance, we beat Donald Trump by much greater margins than does Secretary Clinton. In fact, there was just an NBC poll, I think it came out today. It had Hillary Clinton defeating Donald Trump by 3 points. We were defeating him by 15 points. Polls go up and polls go down. But what is most important in terms of understanding which campaign will decisively defeat Trump is you. Look around here. Look around. And what you will see here in Irvine is what I have seen all over this country. And that is millions of people who are prepared to stand up and fight back, people who are prepared to take on Wall Street, take on the greed of corporate America, take on the fossil fuel industry, take on the pharmaceutical industry. And when you have that kind of energy of people who are prepared to stand up and fight back, that means you have a large voter turnout. And the secret of American politics is that when voter turnout is low, when people are demoralized, when people give up on the political process, that's when Republicans win. But when people are energized and are prepared to transform this country and fight for their kids and their parents, we will have large voter turnout, progressives and Democrats will. Appreciate the Bernie, but let me tell you something. Ain't gonna be Bernie alone who does it.
We're with you, Bernie!
All right? I am the only candidate for president who will tell you a harsh truth. And that truth is, given the nature of American economics and politics today, no president can do it alone. We need a political revolution. You are the revolution. This is a fight we have got to wage together. Now, it is true that Wall Street has endless supplies of money, and I mean endless. It is true that corporate greed is such that they are shutting down plants in America and moving to China. It is true that the corporate media will tell you everything you don't need to know, but very little about what you do need to know. It is true that billionaires and their super PACs are buying elections.
Yes!
But at the end of the day, guess what is more powerful than Wall Street and corporate America and wealthy campaign companies? You are. And the truth is that if we do not allow the Donald Trumps of the world to divide us up, if we stand together, there is nothing we cannot accomplish. Now, the reason that this campaign is doing so well is we're doing something quite radical for contemporary American politics. We're telling the truth. And the truth is sometimes not very pleasant. But if you want to go forward as a nation, if we want to address the real problems, you got to look those problems straight in the eye. You know, we talk a lot about democracy in America, but let me be as clear as I can be. right now, as a result of this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision, we are living under a corrupt campaign finance system which is undermining American democracy. Democracy is not a radical idea. It means you gotta vote, and you gotta vote, and you gotta vote. It does not mean that billionaires should be able to buy elections. It does not mean that Republican governors throughout this country should be able to suppress the vote and make it harder for people to participate in the democratic process. To my mind, democracy means that we should have, as a nation, the highest voting turnout rate of any major country, not one of the lowest. It means that anyone 18 years of age or older is registered to vote. End of discussion. We are taking on not just the corrupt campaign finance system, we are taking on a rigged economy. Here is what a rigged economy is about. A rigged economy is that over the last 25 years, the middle class has been in decline. We now have more people living in poverty than at any time in the history of the United States, and almost all of the new wealth in this country is going to the top 1/10 of 1%. A rigged economy is when today the top 1/10 of 1% now owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. A rigged economy is when the 20 wealthiest people in this country, 20 people, now own more wealth than the bottom half of America, 150 million people. Rigged economy is when one family, the Walton family, owns more wealth than the bottom 42% of the American people. And here's what is especially nauseating about that. And that is the Walton family that owns Walmart pays their workers wages that are so low that many of those workers are forced to go on food stamps and Medicaid. And do you know who pays higher taxes for those food stamps and Medicaid? You do. A rigged economy is when the working class of this country is subsidizing the wealthiest family in this country. And I say to the Walton family, get off of welfare, pay your workers a living wage. Is when, despite a major increase in technology and worker productivity, we have families all over this country where mom is working 40 hours a week, dad is working 40 hours a week, the kids are working, and people still are not earning enough income to pay the bills. That's a rigged economy. A rigged economy is when we have seen in recent years a major increase in the number of millionaires and billionaires in this country, while at the same time we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. A rigged economy is when people are working 2 or 3 jobs and 58% of all new income goes to the top 1%. You ready for a radical idea? Together, we are going to create an economy that works for all of us, not just the 1%. We are going to tell the wealthiest people and the largest corporations who are doing extraordinarily well that yes, they are going to start paying their fair share of taxes. And we are going to be loud and clear in stating that if you work 40 hours or 50 hours a week in this country, you will not be living in poverty. Because we're going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. And when we talk about fair wages, I know that every man here will stand with the women in ending the disgrace of women making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. Together, we are going to bring pay equity to this country, equal pay for equal work. Now, once a month, you're going to see on the front pages a report from the federal government talking about the unemployment rate. And what you see on the front page says that nationally, unemployment is 5%. Anybody believe that? You're right, because there's another report that doesn't make the front pages, and that includes people who have given up looking for work and people who are working part-time when they want full-time. To develop a massive federal jobs program to put our people to work. There was once a time in America where we had the strongest infrastructure in the world, where we had the best roads and bridges and water systems and wastewater plants and rail and airports and levees and dams. That is no longer the case. Our infrastructure in many, many parts of this country is crumbling. We can put 13 million Americans back to work at good wages by rebuilding that infrastructure. Today, we should be hiring teachers, not firing teachers. Today, we should be hiring hundreds of thousands of well-trained, well-paid child care workers. Today, we should be hiring more doctors, more nurses, more medical professionals. More medical professionals. And when we talk about why the middle class of this country has been in decline for 25 years, one of the reasons are the disastrous trade policies that corporate America has pushed on this country. It is not acceptable to me that since 2001, 60,000 factories in this country have shut down. It's not acceptable to me that week after week we read about factories being shut down and going to China. Our message to corporate America is, if you want us to buy your products, you better start manufacturing those products in America, not China. But this campaign is not just about ending a corrupt campaign finance system and a rigged economy. It is about dealing with a criminal justice system that is broken. It is a national disgrace that we have more people in jail than any other country on earth. We are spending $80 billion a year to lock up 2.2 million Americans, disproportionately African American, Latino, and Native Americans. I want this country to have the best educated population, not more people in jail. Cities throughout this country and in rural communities, you have youth unemployment rates of 30, 40, 50%.
That's right.
And when you have kids hanging around, not in school, not working, bad things happen. My view is that we should invest in jobs and education for our young people, not in jails and incarceration. I want to see our young people doing important work and earning good wages. I want to see our young people getting the education that they need. I do not want to see our young people rotting away in jail cells. When we talk about criminal justice reform, we also have to look at local police departments all across this country. Now, I was a mayor in Burlington, Vermont. Got anybody here from Vermont? All right. We're a small state, not a lot of people. I was a mayor for 8 years, and I worked closely with the police department there, and I've worked with police officers all over this country. The average police officer is honest, hardworking, and has a very difficult job. It is not easy being a cop today, but like any other public official, if a police officer breaks the law, that officer must be held accountable. In America, we must demilitarize local police departments. Police departments not look like occupying armies. In America, we have got to make local police departments reflect the diversity of the communities they serve. We need a police culture across this country which says that lethal force, the killing of somebody, is the last response, not the first response. We need to end corporate ownership of prisons and detention centers. We need to rethink the so-called war on drugs. Many people don't know this, but over the last 30 years, Millions of Americans have received police records which stay with them for their whole lives because of possession of marijuana. And if you are a 19-year-old kid going out and looking for a job, you've got a police record, that makes it harder to get that job. A lot of lives have been ruined because of those police records. Today, as part of the Federal Controlled Substance Act, marijuana is listed as a Schedule I drug. Amazingly, right alongside of heroin. If elected president, we will take marijuana out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act. As all of you know, the decision about whether to legalize marijuana or not is a state decision. You've got a proposition on the ballot in November. And I personally think that proposition of legalizing marijuana makes sense. But when we talk about drugs, let us also be very clear. And that is that we have an epidemic and a crisis in this country in terms of opiate and heroin addiction. In my state and in New England and all across this country, we are seeing incredible large numbers of people becoming addicted, and every single day people are dying of overdose. Now, in my view, if we are going to be effective in addressing this crisis, we have got to look at substance abuse and addiction as a health issue, not a criminal issue. And I'm happy to tell you, more and more people in law enforcement understand that as well. And what that means is that we need a revolution in this country in mental health treatment. There are people who are addicted, who want to fight that addiction, but they cannot get the help they need. There are people in this country above and beyond addiction who are dealing with suicidal tendencies and, in fact, homicidal tendencies. We need to make sure those people get the treatment they need when they need it. This campaign is listening to the American people and not just the wealthy campaign contributors. All over this country, we see Republican senators and congressmen, governors talking about Republican family values. And you know and I know what Republican family values are.
They don't exist!
What Republican family values are telling every woman here tonight and every woman in America that she does not have the right to control her own body. I disagree. What Republican family values are is telling our gay brothers and sisters they do not have the right to get married. We disagree. Now, in 6 days, my wife Jane and I will have been married 28 years. And I am in very deep trouble if I forget that anniversary. So if you come to one of my rallies on the 28th, please remind me. But Jane and I We believe in family values, but not Republican family values. And what we believe in is that the United States should end the international embarrassment of being the only major country on earth that does not guarantee paid family and medical leave. I want you to think about this. All over the world, in wealthy countries, that is not a family value. That is the opposite of a family value. And that is why together we are going to pass legislation that guarantees 3 months paid family and medical leave. A great nation is not judged by how many billionaires it has or by how many nuclear weapons it has. A great nation is judged by how it treats the weakest and most vulnerable among us. Today in California, in Vermont, and all over this country, there are millions of seniors and disabled veterans and people with disabilities who are trying to survive on $10,000, $11,000 a year in Social Security. And if you can believe it, and it is true, many Republicans think that is too much. They want to cut Social Security. Well, we've got some very bad news for those Republicans. We are not going to cut Social Security. We are not going to cut the benefits that our veterans have deserved. We are going to expand Social Security. A great nation does not turn its back on our parents and our grandparents, the people who built this country. That is not what we do. We don't turn our backs on the men and women who fought to defend this country. This campaign is listening to young people. I want you to think outside of the box for a minute, outside of the options that corporate media gives to you. Think for a second. You all know, it's a no-brainer, that we are living in an increasingly competitive global economy. We need the best educated workforce in the world. Everybody knows that. And everybody knows that the economy has changed, that technology has changed, and that people today need more education than was the case 30 or 40 years ago. That's just a fact. In my view, when we talk about public education today, it is not good enough just to talk about first grade to 12th grade. That was great 50 years ago. Today, when we talk about public education, we must be including making public colleges and universities tuition free. As a nation, we should be encouraging all of our people, no matter what their age, to get as much education as they can. should be rewarding people for getting an education, not punishing people. I want you to think about this. I grew up in a family that did not have a lot of money. My parents never went to college. And there are kids right now in Irvine throughout this country in the 4th grade and the 6th grade who are living in low-income families. Their parents never went to college. They don't know anybody who went to college. I want those children and their parents and their teachers to know that if those kids study hard and do well in school, regardless of the income of those families, they will be able to get a higher education. How many people here are dealing with student debt? People. I've been all over this country and I have seen thousands and thousands of people dealing with student debt as high as $400,000. A woman in my own city went to medical school. She's now working with low-income people doing great work. $300,000 in debt. Saw a kid in Iowa dropped out after 2 years, $60,000 in debt. Met a guy in Nevada. He has been in debt for 25 years. He's more in debt today than he was when he took out the loan in the first place. That is why I believe that people with student debt should be able to refinance those loans at the lowest interest rates they can buy. Now here is what thinking outside of the box is about. People say to me, my critics say, my opponent says, the establishment media says, Bernie, you're Santa Claus. You're giving away free tuition, public college, you're going to lower student debt. How are you going to pay for it? Well, let me tell you exactly how we are going to pay for it. 8 years ago, against my vote, Congress bailed out Wall Street. Today, Wall Street is doing just fine. I believe that we need to impose a tax on Wall Street speculation. Which will bring in more than enough money to make public colleges and universities tuition free and lower substantially student debt. This campaign is listening to the Latino community. There are 11 million undocumented people in this country today. And let us be clear, some of those people are being exploited every day on the job because if you don't have legal rights to stand up, your employer can rip you off. Those people are being underpaid and they are being cheated. We need in this country comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. And if Congress does not do its job in fixing a broken immigration system, I will use the executive powers of the presidency to do all that I can. We must also end the current policies on deportation. Our job is to unite families, not to break them up. This campaign is listening to our African American brothers and sisters. And they are asking, how does it happen that we have had trillions of dollars to spend on a war in Iraq that we never should have gotten into, but somehow we don't have the funds to rebuild our crumbling inner cities? I have been to Flint, Michigan, where children were poisoned by drinking water with excessive amounts of lead in it. I have been to Detroit, where their public school system is on the verge of fiscal collapse. I have been to Baltimore, Maryland, where tens of thousands of people are addicted to heroin and can't get treatment. Together we are going to change our national priorities. Instead of rebuilding the infrastructure of Afghanistan, we're going to rebuild the inner cities of this country. This campaign is listening to a people whose pain is almost never heard, and that is the Native American community. I have talked to tribal leaders in every part of this country, and I hope all of you appreciate that the debt we owe to the Native American people is so great that it can never actually ever be paid off. The painful truth is that even before this country became a country, when the first settlers came here, the Native American people were lied to, they were cheated, and the treaties they signed were broken. But the truth is that despite all of that, what the Native American people have given to us is a culture that has transformed this country. They have taught us so much. And maybe the most important lesson that they have taught us, a lesson that we cannot afford not to heed, is that as human beings, we are part of nature. We must live with nature. And that if we continue to destroy nature, we are destroying ourselves. And yet, despite all that the Native American people, the first Americans, have given us, today their economic conditions in many parts of this country is just awful. I was in the Pine Ridge Reservation a couple of weeks ago in South Dakota. Conditions there are worse than in many third world countries. Life expectancy for men on that reservation is 58 years of age. Most of the children are dropping out of school. Suicide rate among the young people is horrifically high. Healthcare system totally inadequate. And that is true in many Native American communities throughout this country. If elected president, we will change our relationship to the Native American people. When we begin to think outside of the box, we ask some important questions. And one of the key questions we ask is, how does it happen that in America today, We are the only major country not to guarantee 29 million people today have zero health insurance. Many of you are underinsured with high deductibles and high copayments. And every person here and every American is being ripped off unconscionably by the greed of the drug companies. Drug companies are charging us by far the highest prices in the world for the medicine we need, and yet the top 6 drug companies last year made over $50 billion in profit. Now let me be as honest and straightforward with you as I can be. I believe from the depths of my soul that health care must be a right of all people, not a privilege. We lose many thousands of people every year because they don't get to the doctor when they should, because they don't have health insurance or they can't pay the deductibles. That is wrong. I want everybody, whether they are young or old, rich or poor, inner city or rural America, to know that they will be able to go to the doctor when they need to go to the doctor. And I want people to know that if they end up in the, they will not have to pay off hundreds of thousands of dollars in death allowance. The time is now for us to tell the private insurance industry that the function of healthcare is not to make them excessive profits. Together, we will join the rest of the industrialized world and pass a Medicare for all single-payer system. Everybody here understands a very profound lesson, and that is that real change never takes place from the top on down. It always takes place from the bottom on up. When workers 100+ years ago were working 7 days a week and 12 hours a day and had no rights, when children in Vermont and California were working in factories and losing their hands on machinery that was dangerous, what working people said is, you know what, we are human beings, we demand dignity, and we are going to form trade unions to protect the interests of working people. Of workers came together and helped to create the modern American middle class, and we thank them for that. Amidst, at the time of the abomination of slavery, we had African Americans and their allies looking to the future and saying that the day will come in America where we will rid this country of racism and bigotry and segregation. And we never know the names of those people who died in that struggle, who went to jail in that struggle, who lost their jobs for standing up for civil rights and human dignity. But people stood up, they fought back. 100 years ago, and the children don't know this, 100 years ago in America, women did not have the right to vote. would not get the jobs or the education they wanted 100 years ago. But women stood up and said to the establishment, "You will not define us. You will not." Tell us that our job is to stay home and have babies. We will define ourselves. And women and their male allies fought together by the millions to say that in America, women will not be second-class citizens. That is how change happens. Change happens when, in recent history, with great, great courage, the gay community and their straight allies taking on incredible homophobia and bigotry, gay community stood up and said, you know what, in this country, people should have the right to love whoever they want, regardless of their gender. And today, despite the strong hatred and homophobia that remains, gay marriage is now legal in 50 states in this country. If we were here 5 years ago and somebody jumped up and said, you know, Bernie, the $7.25 an hour federal minimum wage is a starvation wage, we've got to raise it to $15 an hour, the person next to her would have said, you're crazy. You want to double the minimum wage, you want to go from 7.25 to 15, you're thinking too big, you're too radical. That's what people would have said. Maybe $9, maybe $10, 15, too much. But you know what happened? Think about it. Workers in the fast food industry, in McDonald's, in Burger King, in Wendy's, you know what they did? They went out on strike. And I am very proud to have demonstrated with those workers. And they said to their neighbors, and they said to this country, we can't live on $7.25 an hour. And then what happened a few years ago in Seattle, Washington? $15 an hour was passed. In Los Angeles, in San Francisco, in California, and in New York. In other words, what happened is something that people 10 years ago, 5 years ago, never believed could have happened. Real change took place. And that is the history of America. When people stand up and fight back, real change takes place. Now, I've been all over this country. We've talked to over 1.2 million people in gatherings like this. And what I have heard from coast to coast now is that people are beginning to look around them and go beyond the options that the media or the Congress is giving us. And they are beginning to understand that the choices that we face are not whether we cut food stamps or education or environmental protection. The choices that we face are whether we demand the wealthy and large corporations to start paying their fair share of taxes. And people are asking themselves, they're now beginning to think about it. Why does it happen in this country that the middle class continues to disappear while almost all new income and wealth goes to the top 1%? Why is that happening? Why does it happen that in California, in Vermont, and all over this country, we have 20% of our children living in poverty? Why does it happen that young people graduate school deeply in debt and others just can't afford to get the education they need? Why does it happen that we are not more aggressive in dealing with the global crisis of climate change? Why are we not telling the fossil fuel industry that their short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet? Why is it that our infrastructure is disappearing and our inner cities are crumbling? Why is it that we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee paid family and medical leave and health care to all? And all over this country, people are beginning to ask those questions. And what this campaign is about is bringing people together to demand that we have a government that represents all of us, not just the people on top. That we create a government that does not cut Social Security or give tax breaks to billionaires, but addresses the pain of the American working class and middle class. There is nothing that I have said this evening that is not supported by the vast majority of the American people. Nothing is radical. But together, we have got to create a government that listens to us, not just wealthy campaign contributors. And that is what this campaign is about. Now, on June 7th, there is going to be, as you know, a primary here in California. 475 delegates are at stake. If there is a large voter turnout, we will win a strong majority of those delegates. On June 7th, let us see California having the largest voter turnout in Democratic primary history. Great state, one of the most progressive states in America, tell the world you're going to lead us into the political revolution.